October 1944, the Philippines. This was the moment the United States had been waiting for. We were finally back to kick the door down and take back what was ours. General Douglas MacArthur promised he would return, and the United States Navy made sure he kept that promise. We brought the largest armada the world had ever seen. We are talking about American industrial might at its absolute peak. Hundreds of ships, thousands of planes, and tens of thousands of boys ready to liberate the Philippines from Imperial Japan. The plan was bold. It was aggressive. It was American. We landed on the island of Leyte, smashing through defenses and establishing a foothold. The Japanese, they were desperate. They knew that if they lost the Philippines, their supply lines would be cut and their war machine would starve. They had to throw everything they had at us, and they did. But they underestimated one thing. They underestimated the fighting spirit of the American sailor. They thought their massive battleships could scare us. They were dead wrong.
To protect the landing beaches, the Navy set up 3 task groups. We called them Taffy 1, Taffy 2, and Taffy 3. Now listen closely, because this is important. Taffy 3 was not a heavy strike force. It wasn't built for a heavyweight boxing match. These were escort carriers, small, slow, unarmored ships we affectionately called jeep carriers. They were basically floating runways made of tin. Protecting these carriers were a few destroyers and destroyer escorts. These were the tin cans, no armor, small guns. They were designed to hunt submarines, not to fight surface battles. They were the underdogs of the fleet. The plan was simple. The big, fast carriers of the Third Fleet, under Admiral Halsey, would handle the main Japanese threats. Taffy 3 was just supposed to support the troops on the ground and patrol for subs. It was supposed to be a quiet morning, but in war, supposed to be gets people killed. Admiral Halsey took the main fleet north, chasing a decoy. He left the gate open, and Taffy 3 was about to find itself alone in the ring with a monster.
06:45 a.m., October 25th. The sun was just coming up over the Pacific. A pilot on patrol looked down and saw something that made his blood run cold. He didn't see submarines. He didn't see nothing. He saw the pagoda masts of Japanese battleships. And not just any battleships. He saw the center force. This was the main Japanese strike group. 4 battleships, 6 heavy cruisers, 2 light cruisers, and 11 destroyers. And leading them was the Yamato, the largest, heaviest, most terrifying battleship ever built in human history. Its guns fired shells the size of a compact car. This fleet was designed to annihilate anything in its path. And standing between them and the vulnerable American transport ships, just Taffy 3, a handful of tin cans and slow carriers. It was a death sentence. The Japanese opened fire. Colored geysers of water erupted around the American ships. The Japanese used colored dye in their shells to spot their fall. The situation wasn't just bad, it was impossible.
Panic? No. That's not what Americans do. We don't panic. We act. Commander Ernest E. Evans was the captain of the USS Johnston, a Fletcher-class destroyer. Evans was a Native American, a Cherokee and Creek warrior from Oklahoma. He was a fighting man down to his bones. When he took command of the Johnston, he told his crew, "This is going to be a fighting ship. I intend to go in harm's way, and anyone who doesn't want to go along had better get off right now." Nobody got off. When the massive Japanese fleet appeared on the horizon, Evans didn't wait for orders. He didn't wait for backup.
He saw the enemy, and he knew his duty was to protect those carriers. He gave an order that should be etched in history forever. He turned to his crew and ordered a flank speed turn directly toward the enemy fleet. Think about that. One small destroyer charging headfirst at the entire Japanese Navy. It was suicide, but it was the bravest damn thing anyone had ever seen.
The Johnston didn't just sail, she sprinted. Evans ordered the engineers to pour it on, black smoke pouring from the stacks. The Japanese saw this tiny ship rushing at them, and they couldn't believe their eyes. Evans zigzagged the ship through a storm of enemy shells. Water geysers from the Japanese missiles were taller than the ship itself. He closed the distance to 10 miles, then 5 miles. He was charging battleships with guns that could only scratch their paint. But Evans had an ace up his sleeve: torpedoes. At point-blank range, under a curtain of enemy fire, the Johnston unleashed her fish. 10 torpedoes slammed into the water. Evans turned hard to escape. Moments later, boom! The heavy cruiser Kumano was rocked by massive explosions. The bow of the Japanese ship was blown clean off. One tiny American tin can had just crippled a heavy cruiser. We drew first blood. The Japanese were stunned. They thought they were hunting rabbits, but the rabbit just bit their head off.
But you don't punch a giant without getting hit back. The Japanese fleet focused their rage on the Johnston. 3 massive 14-inch shells from a battleship slammed into her. Then 3 more 6-inch shells tore through the bridge. It was a slaughterhouse. The damage was catastrophic. Speed dropped. Power was lost to the rear gun turrets. Commander Evans was hit hard. He lost 2 fingers on his left hand and had shrapnel in his neck and chest. Most men would have collapsed. Most men would have called for a medic. But Ernest Evans was an American warrior. He wrapped a handkerchief around his mangled hand and kept giving orders. With the bridge destroyed, he went to the aft steering station and shouted orders through an open hatch. He was bleeding out. His ship was burning, but he refused to quit. As long as he had a breath in his body, that ship was gonna fight.
The bravery of the Johnston was contagious. Seeing their brother ship charging into hell, the other tin cans decided they weren't gonna let Evans fight alone. This is the brotherhood of the U.S. Navy. You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. The destroyers Hull and Heerman cranked their engines to flank speed and turn toward the enemy. They launched a suicide charge of their own. They laid down massive smoke screens to hide the carriers, blinding the Japanese gunners. They wove in and out of the smoke, firing their small 5-inch guns as fast as the crews could load them. They were getting so close to the Japanese ships that the enemy couldn't even depress their big guns low enough to hit them. It was a barroom brawl on the high seas. We were mixing it up, causing absolute chaos in the rigid Japanese formation.
And then there was the USS Samuel B. Roberts. This was a destroyer escort, even smaller and slower than the Johnston. The crew called her the Sammy B. Before the battle, her captain, Lieutenant Commander Copeland, got on the loudspeaker. He didn't lie to his boys. He told them, "This will be a fight against overwhelming odds from which survival cannot be expected. We will do what damage we can." That takes guts, and they delivered. The Sammy B charged a heavy cruiser line like a pit bull chasing a mail truck. They fired their guns so fast and for so long that the barrels literally overheated and caught fire. They used up almost all their ammunition. They blew apart the superstructure of the heavy cruiser Chokai. A ship 1/10 the size was beating down a heavy cruiser. They fought with such ferocity that they became known forever as the destroyer escort that fought like a battleship.
Here is the incredible part. The sheer aggression of these Americans completely messed with the Japanese admiral's head. Admiral Kurita, commanding the Japanese fleet, was confused. He looked at these crazy Americans charging him through the smoke. He saw the volume of fire. He thought, there is no way these are just destroyers. They must be cruisers, maybe even battleships. Our ferocity made them see ghosts. The smokescreens and the zigzagging attacks broke the Japanese coordination. Their massive battleships were swerving to avoid tiny torpedoes. They were wasting massive shells shooting at shadows. The mighty Imperial Navy, the pride of Japan, was being bullied by a handful of tin cans. We weren't just winning a firefight, we were winning the psychological war. We made them afraid. Back on the Johnston, the end was near. The ship was a wreck. Engines dead, guns silent. The bridge was gone. Japanese destroyers circled her like sharks, pouring fire into the burning hull. At 9:45 a.m., Commander Evans gave the order, "Abandon ship." As the American sailors jumped into the oil-slicked water, something unbelievable happened. A Japanese destroyer sailed slowly past the sinking Johnston. The Japanese crew didn't cheer. They didn't laugh. They were silent. Survivors in the water looked up and saw the Japanese captain standing on the wing of his bridge. He looked at the sinking American ship, and he saluted. He saluted the Johnston. Even the enemy had to respect the sheer guts of these men. They fought with such ferocity that they earned the respect of the people trying to kill them. The Johnston rolled over and sank, taking Commander Evans with her. He never left his post, a true captain to the end.
But the fight wasn't just on the water. Above the clouds, the pilots of Taffy 3 were pulling off their own miracle. Remember, these were support planes. They were loaded with small bombs and depth charges for submarines, not armor-piercing weapons for battleships. It didn't matter. They attacked anyway. When they ran out of bombs, they made dry runs. They flew straight down the throats of Japanese anti-aircraft fire just to distract the gunners so the ships could escape. One pilot, Lieutenant Commander Edward Huxtable, glided his Avenger through the Japanese formation for hours, buzzing the towers of battleships, acting like he was going to drop a bomb he didn't even have. They bluffed with their lives. They created a swarm of angry hornets that blinded and confused the enemy fleet.
And then, the miracle happened. The psychological pressure broke them. Admiral Kurita, commanding the most powerful surface fleet Japan had left, cracked. He looked at the smoke, the aggressive destroyers, the swarming planes, and he decided he couldn't win. He thought he was fighting the main American fleet. He didn't know he was beaten up on a handful of escorts. At 12:36 p.m., with victory right in his hands, he gave the order, "Turn north." The Japanese fleet turned around and sailed away. The men of Taffy 3 watched them go in disbelief. They were battered, bleeding, and sinking, but they were still floating. They had stood their ground against the Yamato and won. They had bluffed the entire Imperial Navy and saved the MacArthur Landing Force. It was the greatest upset in naval history.
The cost was high. 2 destroyers, the Johnston and the Howell, 1 destroyer escort, the Samuel B. Roberts, and 2 escort carriers were lost. Over 1,000 American boys didn't come home that day. But look at what they achieved. They stopped a massacre on the beaches of Leyte. They proved that it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. Commander Ernest Evans was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. he was the first Native American in the Navy to receive it. His story and the story of Taffy 3 is a reminder to the world. You can have bigger ships, you can have bigger guns, but you will never, ever have more heart than the United States Navy.
History tells us the battle off Samar shouldn't have been won. The math didn't add up. But American spirit doesn't care about math. We honor those men today not just because they fought, but because they stood tall when everything told them to run. They looked the monster in the eye and said, "Not today." If this story fired you up, if you're proud of our history, hit that like button and share this video. Let's make sure the world never forgets the name USS Johnston. Semper Fortis.